So we're starting our trip off north to the miniature convention, and we're starting off from our wine village, Martinborough. And now Martinborough was laid out by a farmer, John Martin, on his farm, and he designed it around the shape of the Union Jack. It's the only personally designed town in New Zealand, and if Roger is going to insert a view from above to show you how the town works, the layout works. But it was quite slow to get off the ground. This was in the late 1800s. So John and his cronies built the Martinborough Hotel. Town in New Zealand that has been designed privately. And John designed it on his farmland, and he laid out the farm on a shape of the Union Jack. So all the streets go up from the square on the crosses of the Union Jack. And then he named all the streets after countries that he visited on his field trip and towns. So he went to Naples, you've got Naples Street, Dublin Street, Ohio Street, Texas Street, and all around the town we've got street names of Cambridge Road, New York Street, etc., etc. Well, it was a bit slow to get off the ground until John Martin and his cronies built the Martinborough Hotel. And this was in the late 1800s. And then you had the post office across the road. And along from there was a general store, which is now our bottling department, which bottles all our wine and olive oil in town. Lots of tourists come into town these days. And then behind the post office is a big building. It was the Railway Hotel from Carterton. And it was brought down to town on the back of 2 trucks. Now, New Zealand houses are wooden mainly, and they're built like doll houses. They have solid floors and walls and ceilings, and they can be relocated very easily. So this hotel was cut in 2 and brought into town on the back of 2 huge trucks. And all the locals came out to welcome it in and stood around with glasses of wine and glasses of beer and toasted the success of it coming into town. It was quite a unique experience, really. And so this is now a wine village. In the 1980s, a few people came into town, including Roger and I and my sister and husband, her husband, and his boss and his wife, and a few other local people. And we started up vineyards in the 1980s. And this changed the whole profile of the town. And a lot of the refurbishment has been in the old style. So it's quite colonial still, and that attracts a lot of visitors. So we have about 28 vineyards. They can come and go, so there are 28 vineyards around this area. And unfortunately, the town is on a gravel strip, which would make very good vineyards, actually, but they've already built the town on it. And so I think that's about all I can tell you in a short amount of time. We've got 8.5 hours to do this. I'm not going to give you an 8.5-hour video. Roger and I are going to stop at different places that are really lovely to show you. And our first stop is going to be Miniaturist, where there's a very old brewery. So I shall stop there. This brewery that's sitting in the middle of nowhere, it's called the Tui Brewery, and it had a big sort of an injection about 15 years ago when they started this advertising campaign, where they brought these kind of signs out, and you saw them all red and black and orange, and they would have a statement on one side, and then they would have "Oh yeah," which is a typical Australian and New Zealand response to a tall story, on the other side. And that sort of swept the country. And then they had a group of young ladies, quite pretty, in shorts and tops, who supposedly were making the brew, and they fronted that advertising campaign for quite a few years too. And so this became a very popular place. Now it is, they have tours and they have a cafe on site. Right, now half an hour along, and we're actually in a little town that Roger and I often stop to have our cup of coffee, and this is Woodville. And then from Woodville we will be going over the Saddle Road into another part of New Zealand, the middle part, and ultimately we'll catch up on Highway 1. So this is a little town that's quite famous for its antique shops and quite colonial still. Some of the shops along the street are fairly old, and this one is my favourite. It's run by a couple of guys, and they sell amazing amounts of trim and materials that they must get from other shops. Here's another little shot of the town. You can see it's a very windy day by the windmill going like the clappers there. And now we're certainly going to go and stop and have a coffee. So a few minutes out of town, we're using the Saddle Road, and that goes over a range of mountains which separates the Wairarapa from the Manawatu. And along the ridge of these mountains is a wind farm, and this wind farm can supply up to 20% of the power in New Zealand. And today they're all working really fast. I just stopped here to take a photo of this lovely little garage, which looked like a movie setup as I whisked past. I had to turn around and come back. I think it's really cute. Well worth a stop. So continuing on our trip, and we've driven along Windy Ridge up towards Stormy Point. When you look out from Stormy Point, you can see clearly how the two plates, the ocean plates, are pushing New Zealand up between them, and you've got this enormous lot of mountains and craggy land, and it's caused by this movement. And we're looking west at the moment, and down below is a river, it's the Manawatu, I think, that is running along the valley floor. And it's a very windy day today, I have to tell you. Stopping in Taihape for lunch, and that's pretty much what we always consider to be a halfway point. And it's famous for its gumboot throwing competitions. So moving along, and we are on this road that links the two highways together, and it's a bit of country road we thought we'd show you, and we're going down into the valley that you saw from above and going up the other side. It is quite rugged country. It's got a really deep gorge, and you can see by the cliffs how much work's been done by the river. So we're heading towards Wairuru, which is the kind of in the middle of New Zealand, and Mount Ruapehu. Right, we're looking at Mount Ruapehu. Now, the Maori settled in New Zealand about 1100 AD, and they got to name everything. And they named this group of mountains. And there was Ruapehu, and there's Tongariro in the background, and across from Ruapehu behind him is a little female mountain, Ngauahoe. And the Maori have a legend that Ruapehu and another mountain fought over Ngauahoe, and Ruapehu won. And this could have been translated as a series of eruptions, quite violent ones I'd imagine, because this whole land here was heaved up out of the sea. Anyway, the vanquished mountain fled across the land to the Taranaki Bight, and he's called Taranaki, Mount Taranaki. And some of the Maori won't even live between these two mountains, got a frog, because they think that the mountain's going to return and beat up Ruapehu. This is quite an active volcanic plateau, and you're also looking at the desert. This is called the desert road that we're on at the moment, and it can be very bleak and snowy in the wintertime. So this is another shot of Mount Ruapehu, and you can see the desert a little bit better, and there are some army manoeuvres going on. I saw a couple of vehicles over there making a lot of dust, and this was all army training ground. And then you have Ngauahoe, and all that bumpy mass is part of Ngauahoe mountain, and the cone is the active part of the mountain. Now sorry about the noise, that was a mountain that probably blew the top off itself at one stage in the past, when things were rather violent around here. And I've just seen myself in the car mirror. I'll take it up a bit further. So there we go, old Ruapehu, and usually he has a bit of steam coming out the top, but he hasn't today. So now we see Tongariro. He's an active vent in a huge mountain which had blown its top off thousands of years ago, and then we'll be going into Lake Taupo. This is looking back the way we came, and you can just see Tongariro there on the left hand side. Oh, it's not a very good shot, you can't see the snow or anything. And this is Lake Taupo. This is only a small part of this lake. This is the biggest lake in New Zealand, and it's actually the volcanic caldera filled with water. And the explosion of this lake, this volcano, brought New Zealand up out of the sea millions of years ago, I would think. And right on the far end you can see a little bit of steam. There's a lot of thermal activity still down that end of the lake, and there's also hot pools on this end of the lake, and sometimes they can be quite steamy. So there's swans on the lake, and that lady is collecting pumice because there's a lot of pumice on the beaches. So we're just stopping at Taupo for a coffee, and I'm looking south now down the lake towards Mount Ruapehu, and you can just see Ngauahaui's got some cloud around it now, Tongariro, and I don't think you can see Ngauahaui. I'm not sure what those peaks are over there. I won't tell any lies. I don't know the names of those. And so this is pretty much the north end of the lake where we are, and now we've got a long haul up to Auckland with very little scenery, so you probably won't see me until tomorrow. And so we'll see how we go. If there's something really special I'll stop, but usually we're just driving up through farmland and forestry and small towns. Okay, so I shall see you when I see you. So we had a long trip up to Auckland, and it was an hour longer because we had a detour, and we finally got up here, and Roger's brother had cooked us a lovely meal which was really appreciated, and he lives in a lovely spot on the side of Auckland Harbour overlooking Little Shoal Bay. So we're resting up a bit, and then we're going to do the registration at the convention venue, and we have to set our table up in time for sales on 6 o'clock. So we've got a busy day ahead of us, and I hope you enjoyed our trip up. It was a sort of a one-off for us, and we've had to learn a few things, and this is why it's taken so long to get it to air. But please forgive us, and we will show you a little bit more on the way home.